Hey there, fellow educators, and honestly, anyone who's ever wondered what would happen if we actually listened to teachers for once. I'm Leah Cleary, and this is If Teachers Ruled the World. You know, after 25 years in the classroom, I've learned that teaching isn't really about having all the answers. It's about being brave enough to ask the right questions, and maybe, just maybe, admitting when we have no idea what we're doing, which, let's be honest, happens more often than we'd like to admit. So grab your coffee, or whatever, and let's talk about the real stuff, the messy, imperfect, sometimes beautiful reality of what it's like to shape young minds while trying to keep our own sanity intact. Because if we're going to change the world, we might as well be honest about what that actually looks like. All right, let's dive in. Hey there, teachers. Welcome back to If Teachers Ruled the World. I'm Leah Cleary, and this month we're going to do something a little bit different for our Practical Tips episode. I just got back from the Georgia Educational Technology Conference, and I spent most of this week learning alongside other educators instead of being in my classroom. And honestly, it was exactly what I needed. There's something energizing about being in a space where everyone is trying to figure out how to do this job better, how to support our students more effectively, and how to maybe get a little bit of our lives back in the process. So today, I'm sharing my top 5 takeaways from this conference. They aren't outlandish ideas that require a huge budget or a tech coordinator to implement. These are practical tools and strategies that you can actually use. Some of them are things I'm already doing in my classroom. Some are things I learned that I can't wait to try. And one of them is so simple, it made me want to kick myself for not knowing it sooner. And yes, I do have a blog post complete with video tutorials about this. I'll link to it in the show notes. But before we dive into the list, I want to share something that really reframed how I'm thinking about all of this technology, especially AI. The overall vibe at the conference this year was really different from previous years. Back in 2022 and 2023, when AI was just exploding on the scene, there was this sense that we had to convince teachers that it was here to stay. We had to persuade people that there were legitimate, helpful ways to use it. That's not where we are anymore. The dust is settled, teachers know AI is here, and now they want practical ways to use it, especially as our class sizes keep growing and the demands on our time keeps increasing. So here's what really struck me. One of the presenters, Curts, who I'm going to talk more about in a minute, and I'll link to in the show notes, shared this research from 1984. A guy named Benjamin Bloom of Bloom's Taxonomy, who most of us have heard of, published a study that showed if you could give every single student a one-on-one tutor, you could move student achievement up by 2 standard deviations. 2 standard deviations, that's massive. But in 1984, that was completely unrealistic. There was no way to give every kid their own personal tutor. It was a beautiful idea with no practical application. Fast forward to 2025. We have the technology. We have AI tutors that can work with every single student, adapt to their needs, scaffold their learning, and be available whenever they need help. What was impossible 40 years ago is sitting in our classrooms right now, often for free. That's the lens I want you to hold as we talk through these 5 tips. This isn't just about making our lives easier, though that definitely matters too. This is about giving our students access to support that research tells us actually works. All right, let's get to it. Tip 1, Clipboard history. This is my favorite kind of conference takeaway, and it has absolutely nothing to do with AI. It's one of those how did I not know this existed sooner moments that makes you feel like you've been working way too hard for way too long. So I was presenting at the conference about custom GPTs and how teachers can use them to save time on grading and planning. I was demonstrating how to set one up, and I was going back and forth between a Google Doc where I had all my instructions typed out and the Chat GPT interface where I was configuring the custom GPT. And I was copying and pasting section by section, switching between windows. And this guy in my session raised his hand and said, you can use the clipboard history, right? And I said, the what? He told me that if you hit the Windows key plus V on a PC, and I'll be honest, I am a PC girl, not a Mac girl, and I do not remember what the command was on a Mac, but don't worry, I'll put it in the show notes, and it is also in that blog post that I'm linking, so there's also one for Mac. So Windows key plus V on a PC. V is in Valley. It pulls up the last 5 or so things you've copied to your clipboard. Instead of going back and forth between the two windows, I could have just copied everything I needed first, one at a time, then switched to full screen on ChatGPT, hit Windows V, and pulled from that clipboard history for each section. Mind absolutely blown. This is one of those tiny things that saves you seconds at a time, but those seconds add up. And honestly, it just makes you feel a little less frantic when you're trying to get something done quickly. So that's tip number 1. Windows key plus V and something else on a Mac that I will link to in the show notes. Try it. You're welcome. Tip number 2 is more of a mindset shift than a specific tool, but I think it's really important. And that's don't be afraid to adapt what you learn to the tools you actually have access to. Let me explain what I mean. My presentation was about custom GPTs in ChatGPT, which is a paid feature. You need ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 a month. And even though it was a paid feature, my session was packed. Teachers are desperate to figure out how to get some of their time back because this job will absolutely consume your entire life if you let it. But here's the thing. Yes, my presentation was about custom GPTs, but teachers are resourceful. And so we talked about workarounds. We talked about how you don't have to have the paid version. You can create a prompt library for your best prompts and use them very quickly in regular chats. We also talked a little bit about projects in ChatGPT, which I believe are available on the free plan. And they can do a lot of what custom GPTs can do. My Microsoft users talked a little bit about Microsoft Copilot and that it has some of these features already built into the platform if that's what your school uses. Because the truth is, not everyone has access to the fancy version of every tool. Not everyone has that in their budget. Not everyone can convince their district to approve something new, and that's okay. The principles behind these tools, how to structure a good prompt, what information you need to include to get useful feedback, how to think about using AI as a teaching assistant. Those principles work no matter what platform you're using. And if you do happen to be using ChatGPT Plus, I will link to my custom GPT for grading that helps teachers build them for grading in the show notes. So when you're at a conference or you watch a webinar or you see someone sharing something cool on social media, don't immediately think, well, I don't have that tool, so this doesn't apply to me. Ask yourself, what's the thinking behind this? What problem is this solving? And how could I apply that same thinking to the tools I do have? Teachers, we're incredibly resourceful. We've been making do with limited resources for our entire careers. This is just another version of that. All right. Tip number 3 brings us back to that Bloom research I mentioned at the beginning. Use student-facing AI tutors to give every student access to one-on-one support. This is the one that I think has the most potential to actually change what's happening in our classrooms. Because as class sizes keep growing, we talked about this on last month's policy episode. I'll link to that in the show notes too. Classes are getting bigger nationally, not just in my county. And when you've got 30 plus kids in a room, there's no way you can give each student the individual attention they need. But AI tutors can help. I use Magic School AI in my classroom. They have these spaces called AI rooms where you can set up a chat bot that students interact with. You can program it with specific knowledge, specific learning objectives, specific guardrails about what it should and shouldn't do. And then students can ask it questions, get help working through problems, have it explain concepts in different ways. Basically, they get their own tutor. This brings me back to Eric Curts at the conference. I mentioned him earlier. He was showing us a similar feature in other platforms. School AI has spaces, Brisk has something similar. These are all free features. You don't need the paid version for these. It's a beautiful thing. And here's what I love about it. The AI doesn't just give students answers. It coaches them through the learning process. It asks questions, it scaffolds, it adapts to what each student needs. You can also do really creative things with these bots. You can turn them into historical figures that students can interview. You can create a science tutor, a writing tutor, a math tutor, all pre-programmed with your curriculum, your expectations. I'm going to say your voice, but they're not literally using your voice, but you can control the tone that they use. Now, I know some teachers are nervous about this. They worry that students will just use it to cheat or that it's replacing human connection. And I get that. But here's how I think about it. I can't be in 7 places at once. I can't sit down with every student who's confused and walk them through every problem every day. But I can set up a tool that helps them when I'm not available. And then I get to spend my human time on things that actually require a human. The relationships, the deeper conversations, the moments of real connection. That's what that 1984 research was pointing to. One-on-one tutoring works, and now we have a way to make it possible for every single kid. Tip number 4 is about a great tool called Brisk, and a specialty feature that absolutely blew my mind when I first saw it demonstrated. Brisk is a Chrome extension that I've used before, mostly for creating materials or giving feedback on student work. But at the conference, they showed us this feature where you can turn any website into an interactive, adaptive learning experience for students. Here's how it works. You find an article or a web page that you want students to read and learn from. You pull up the Brisk extension and you tell it what you want students to focus on and what your learning objectives are. And Brisk creates an AI chatbot that guides students through that content. The example they showed us was an article about butterflies. Students got a link to access the bot, and when they opened it, the bot started by asking them a multiple choice question. If they got it right, great, it moved on. Then it asked them to explain the life cycle of a butterfly in their own words. And here's the part that got me. When the student in the demo said, "I'm not sure. Can you just give me the answer?" The bot said, "I can't do that because you learn best by figuring this out yourself, but I can help you." And then it showed them a series of emojis representing the butterfly life cycle, egg, caterpillar, so on and so forth, and prompted the students to go back to the article and read about each stage. It was scaffolding in real time. It was adapting to what that student needed. And it was doing it in a way that kept the student engaged with the actual source material instead of just spoon feeding them information. This is differentiation at scale, my friends. This is something we've been told to do forever, but rarely have the time to execute. And you can do this with any website. Primary sources for history, science articles, news stories, whatever it is you're teaching. The setup is pretty straightforward. I've got a tutorial for it on that blog post I'm linking to in my notes, just a short video. But you just need the Chrome extension. You navigate to the site you want to use and you configure the bot with your learning goals. Then you share a link with students and let it do its thing. I'm already thinking about how I could use this with some of the primary source documents we read in AP World History. Instead of just assigning a reading and hoping students do it, I could have the bots walk them through it, ask them questions, help them make connections. That's powerful. All right, tip number 5 is all about Canva. And I know what you're thinking. I already use Canva. I make graphics in Canva all the time. Maybe a presentation or two. I do too. But this is all about using Canva in a way I'd never really explored before for real-time student feedback while you're delivering your presentations. Canva just upgraded their forms feature, and it is so nice. You can create forms with a beautiful design because it's Canva, and of course it looks fantastic, and embed them directly in your presentation slides. Students can scan a QR code or type in a link, and they go straight to that form on their device. They answer your questions, submit their responses, and you get all the data in real time without ever leaving Canva. Now, I've done real-time feedback before with other tools, Poll Everywhere, Google Forms, all of that. But the thing I love about doing it in Canva is that it's all in one place. You're not switching between platforms. You're not asking students to open a separate tab. Everything stays integrated. And here's a little tip that's going to save you some frustration. When you create a form and embed it on a slide, go down to the bottom preview pane where you can see all your slides. Click the 3 dots on the slide that has your form on it. There's an option to grab the link that will take students directly to that slide instead of the beginning of your presentation. So they don't have to scroll through 20 slides to find the question you want them to answer. I have a demo of this in the blog post linked in the show notes. Just go ahead and play with it. Open Canva, create a presentation, add a form, and click around. That's how I learn most of this stuff anyway. And the bigger point here is this. Canva is a tool most of us already use and feel comfortable with. And when you realize it can do more than just pretty graphics, it becomes even more useful. You don't always need to learn a whole new platform. Sometimes you just need to dig a little deeper into the tools you're already using. All right, those are my 5 takeaways from GAETC 2025. Just to recap. 1. Use clipboard history. Windows plus V. 2. Don't be afraid to adapt what you learn to tools you actually have access to. The thinking matters more than the platform. 3. Explore student-facing AI tutors like Magic School AI, and Brisk. Give your students access to that one-on-one support that research tells us works. 4. Check out Brisk's feature that turns any website into an interactive learning experience. It is scaffolding at scale. And 5. Dig into Canva's presentation and forms features. Real-time feedback all in one beautiful place. I'm going to link to all of these tools in the show notes along with Eric Curts' blog and YouTube channel because he's doing really great work explaining this stuff for teachers. And again, I'm also linking to my blog post about this that also has video tutorials on it. And listen, I know it can feel overwhelming to hear about a bunch of new tools and strategies, especially when you're already exhausted and stretched thin. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one, just one. Try the clipboard history, or set up a Canva form, or explore Magic School AI for 10 minutes. You don't have to do all of it. You don't have to be perfect at any of it. That's the whole point. Good enough is good. Experimenting is how we learn, and small changes add up. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week on If Teachers Ruled the World. Be sure to visit me at leahcleary.com and share this with a teacher friend. That's how we grow. Until next time. That's it for this week on If Teachers Ruled the World. Be sure to subscribe, share with a teacher friend, and join the conversation at leahcleary.com. Until next time, keep ruling your classroom and rewriting the rules.